How we doing, Pennsylvania? I gotta say, it is great to be in the incredible Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and in just 2 days, we're gonna turn Pennsylvania red, and we're gonna take this country back and make Donald Trump the next president of the United States. Now, I want to give a shout out to some of our special guests here. In particular, I came out here and I'm like, who the hell spoke before me that was 6'8"? And the answer is Glenn Youngkin. Glenn, thank you so much for your leadership in Virginia. We've got the great Governor Doug Burgum of North Dakota. Doug, thank you. My dear friend and colleague, Senator Bill Haggerty from Tennessee. We've got the incredible, I didn't really realize we had Congressman Byron Donalds. Byron, thank you, man. God bless you. And his Florida colleague, Congressman Mike Waltz. Mike, thank you, man. We got Lawrence Tabas, the Pennsylvania GOP chair. Lawrence, where are you? Somewhere. Maybe he's backstage. Maybe he went to the next event. We've got former Attorney General Matt Whitaker. Matt, thank you, man. We have Chad Wolf in the house, former DHS Secretary. Thank you, Chad. Man, we have the whole crew here. We got David Bossie. David, good to see you, man. And of course, last but certainly not least, my favorite person, no offense to any of you, is my best friend and my lovely wife, Usha. Thank you, honey, for being here. Well, you know, I was in Las Vegas a couple of days ago, and we arrived at the airport at the same time as Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota. He's, of course, my Democratic counterpart. No, it's okay. It's all right. You know, I was thinking to myself that, you know, I actually feel a little bad for Tim Walz. So I'm going to be bipartisan here, maybe unexpectedly, especially for the cameras in the back. But, you know, Tim Walz, I think, has the toughest job in American politics. Think about this. You have had, I'm sure, tough days at work. Your hands hurt, your back's tired, but think about it. You have never had to go out there and try to convince the American people that Kamala Harris can be the president of the United States. That's tough. That's tough work. You gotta think about this. Tim Walz has to go out there and try to persuade the people of Pennsylvania that Kamala Harris is going to fix the affordability crisis that her policies created. He's got to go out there and convince the people that Kamala Harris has all of a sudden got religion on border security, despite the fact that she for 4 years bragged about opening the southern border. He's got to go persuade people that Kamala Harris has the competence to steer the world through these troubled times. And, you know, it's kind of interesting. If he's got the toughest job in American politics, I think I've got the easiest job in American politics, because you know what I get to talk about? I get to talk about the fact that when Donald J. Trump was president, inflation was at 1.5%. Americans were making good money. When Donald Trump was president, we had the fastest rising take-home pay in 40 years in the United States of America. When Donald Trump was president, the world was more peaceful and our allies were much more secure, and so were we. And of course, when Donald J. Trump was president, the border was secure and illegal aliens knew they couldn't take advantage of the United States of America. That's a pretty good track record, I think. And here's the one thing I'll say. Look at me. I'm being just friendly to Tim Walz, and I'm going to be friendly to Kamala Harris. The one thing I'll say for Kamala Harris is that every time she does an interview, I think we pick up about 100,000 votes. Because now I remember when Kamala's got a teleprompter in front of her, she's got all these slogans and she makes all these promises that she's somehow going to do something different over the next 4 years that she hasn't done over the last 4 years. She'll stand up there and without an ounce of shame, Kamala Harris will say, on day one, we're going to make that border more secure. Or on day one, she'll say, we're going to tackle the affordability crisis affecting our fellow Americans. And I think all of us with an ounce of common sense are saying, Kamala, day one was 1,400 days ago. What the hell have you been doing the whole time? She pretends that she didn't cast the deciding vote on trillions of dollars in new spending, but check the tape. We know that she did. She pretends that she didn't brag that she was going to open the border. But remember, the minute she became the border czar, 93 executive orders, they bragged about undoing Donald Trump's successful border policies. And now our fellow Americans are dealing with the consequences. Every single time that Kamala Harris promises you that she's going to do something, ask Kamala Harris, what have you actually done? And the answer is that she's made this country weaker. She has made our border open. She has made groceries and housing unaffordable for our fellow citizens. And I think, and I've learned this from my running mate, that in just 3 days, the people of Pennsylvania are going to say to Kamala Harris, you are fired. Go back to San Francisco where you belong. We don't need you in the Oval Office. But as much, they must have had an open bar here before I showed up. You guys are having a good time. But remember, as much as she says things that they normally sound pretty bad, but if you don't think too hard about them, maybe they sound okay. When she's got a teleprompter, every now and then Kamala Harris will do an interview. Now, she usually only does softball interviews. She doesn't do the hostile media that me and President Trump do, the friendly American media. They just throw softballs at Kamala Harris. But I know that we're in a proud baseball town, and all of you appreciate that. The problem with softball interviews is you've still got to be able to hit the softball. And I don't know that Kamala Harris could hit a T-ball based on what we've seen from these interviews. Now, look, you're never going to hear me complain about this job because it is the honor of my life to be able to ask you to make me your next Vice President of the United States. It's an incredible thing. Think about this. Think about this. This is the greatest country in the world. I grew up in a poor family, and now I'm here 2 days before an election asking all of you to vote for me to be your next Vice President of the United States. That's a great testament to the United States of America. So you will never hear me complain about this job, save this one time. There is one act of service that I engage in for all of you, and it's that I watch Kamala Harris do her interviews so that you don't have to. And a couple weeks ago, Kamala did an interview with The View. She did an interview with The View, and remember, we need you as sharp as possible over the next 2 days. So do not go and watch this interview. You'll lose about 20 IQ points. But again, I watched it so that you didn't have to. And what she said in this interview sort of blew up all the scripted teleprompter speeches that Kamala Harris gives. They asked her, name one thing that you would have done differently from Joe Biden. One thing in 4 years, open borders, sky-high grocery prices. And she said, nothing comes to mind. Nothing comes to mind. Now, to be fair, that could be the campaign slogan of the Harris-Walz campaign, nothing comes to mind. But think about this. Think about this. In 15 seconds, she gave lie to the entire heart of her campaign, because as much as she goes around and as much as the media helps her tell this story that somehow she's going to be the candidate of change, we know that Kamala Harris is the candidate of more of the same. More of the same of our fellow citizens not being able to afford groceries. More of the same of our young people not being able to afford the American dream of homeownership. More of our communities flooded with fentanyl brought in by the Mexican drug cartels. And I think in 2 days, Pennsylvania, are we ready to take this country in a different direction? Are we ready to make Donald Trump the next president of the United States? I think so. You know, the thing that the media never tells the truth about this. They don't tell the truth about a lot. And You know, the corporate media, I think they see themselves as allies of Kamala Harris rather than as people who ought to tell the truth. But look, some of this stuff is easy, right? Sometimes public policy is really hard and really complicated. But when you have a vice president who comes in and says that we want to make it harder for American energy workers and American energy companies to produce energy, shockingly, energy goes through the roof. And now we know, by the way, that if the guy who's driving your groceries to the grocery store is paying 45% more for diesel, then all of us are paying more for groceries. If the guy who's delivering the lumber to the job site is paying 40% more for gasoline, then all of us are paying more for the stuff that's built at that job site. And so whenever Donald Trump is asked, what is our plan to lower costs for American consumers? What is our plan to lower costs for American citizens? It is very simple. Drill, baby, drill. We got to unleash American energy. And I know there's a little bit more of the energy economy in the western part of the state than the eastern part of the state, but all Pennsylvanians are going to benefit if we have a president who says, you know what, we're going to stop buying oil and gas from tin pot dictators all over the world. We're going to buy it from Pennsylvania workers, from Pennsylvania territory. We got plenty of it right here. Let's get it out of the ground. And there are so many contrasts, so many obvious things that Kamala Harris should have done, or maybe she even did the opposite of what she should have done. And you compare it to the record of Donald Trump and you realize why President Trump was able to deliver low prices and fast rising take-home pay. It's common sense economic policy. Think about this. Kamala Harris is the first candidate I've ever seen who will go around and brag that she wants to raise your taxes. Meanwhile, she'll reward foreign corporations and foreign companies for shipping American jobs overseas. How does that make sense? You know what Donald Trump wants to do? Donald Trump wants to give you more of your money. He wants to cut taxes for American workers. He wants to cut taxes for people who are creating jobs in this country. And he wants to penalize the foreign countries and the foreign businesses that are shipping American jobs overseas. That makes a lot more sense. You know, and look, there are all of these policies, all these criticisms that we could make of Kamala Harris, and obviously we do. But here's the biggest difference maybe between Kamala Harris and between Donald J. Trump is Kamala Harris, she doesn't just attack me. She doesn't just attack Donald J. Trump. And look, we asked for it. I asked to be your vice president. I'm asking every single day. So by all means, Kamala Harris, attack me. But you know who you shouldn't attack? You shouldn't attack the citizens of this country who are pissed off because you've done a bad job. And that's... And I think our message to the American people is don't let them call you garbage for thinking that you ought to be able to afford your groceries. Don't let them call you a racist for thinking that we ought to have a secure southern border. Don't let them say that we're bad people because we think that Kamala Harris is doing a bad job. So here's my message to Kamala Harris. We are not garbage for thinking that you've done a bad job, but in 2 days, we're going to take out the trash in Washington, D.C. So let me just finish on this note here. Early voting in the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is over. By the way, who's early voted here? Interesting. Who hasn't voted yet? You know, Pennsylvania, that's the first time where I think we've got more people who haven't voted early, more people who plan to vote on Election Day, and that's fine. We got November the 5th. We got to get to the polls, but here's what I want you to do. I don't want you to just vote for yourself and for your family. I want every single person here to get out there and vote 10 times. Now, the Philadelphia Inquirer is about to say J.D. Vance comes to Pennsylvania and asks for large-scale vote fraud. Here is the legal way Here is the legal way, Philadelphia Inquirer, that we're going to vote 10 times. You're going to take yourself to the polls. You're going to take 9 of your friends and family along with you. That's how we're going to vote 10 times the legal way. I love this saying, but there's a lot of truth to it. Look, we got to make this election in Pennsylvania too big to rig. That is the plan. We want to get so many voters that no matter what garbage the Democrats pull in the final stretches, no matter how many lies they try to circulate through the American media, that we make sure that the American people get a president who's fit to lead the greatest country in the world. We don't have it now, but we're about to have it in just 2 days. And, you know, just think about this. I mean, for the undecided voters, I imagine, hopefully, most of you are not undecided voters, but I imagine we've got some folks who are watching, and we'll see the clips later. Think about this. Think about the closing argument of the Kamala Harris campaign. She's got her boss, Joe Biden, calling half of the country garbage because we think that they've done a terrible job. They've got her running mate calling people fascists for attending rallies where we get out and celebrate this country and what it could be if we had better leadership. They're calling us racist for thinking that she's got disastrous border policies. Her basic argument, as far as I can tell, is that we are bad people for thinking that Kamala Harris should have done a better job with all the responsibility the American people have given her over the last few years. You know what Donald J. Trump's closing argument is? That we want every person, whether you vote for us or not, whether you agree with our politics, we want to unleash a golden age of American prosperity for all our citizens because we love this country, and that means loving the people who live here. We want every single American, we want every single Pennsylvanian to be able to afford groceries. We want every Pennsylvanian to live in safe and secure communities. And yes, I want every single person here, I'm sure all of us, know somebody in our lives who's planning to vote the wrong way on November the 5th. But I don't want us to take the bait of Kamala Harris and the Democrats. I want us to persuade those people to vote the right way over the next couple of days. But you know, if they vote the wrong way, they vote the wrong way. They're still our fellow citizens. We're still going to love them, and we're still going to serve them as best we can. Do not follow the lead of Kamala Harris and the Democrats. Look, I'm sure a lot of us, and I count myself among you, a lot of us have lost friends over politics. A lot of us have been attacked, have been criticized, have been lied about. Look, it's the nature of the process. You're never going to hear me complain about it. But we are never going to rebuild this country if we follow Kamala Harris's lead and attack our fellow citizens for having different political positions than us. We believe in persuasion. We believe in telling you you're wrong and persuading you ought to vote for the people's president, Donald J. Trump, right? It's very simple. But you know something that Donald Trump will never do? Donald Trump will never go out there and say that his fellow citizens should be censored or silenced for disagreeing with him. And that is maybe the single biggest difference between Kamala Harris and Donald J. Trump is, yes, we think she's doing a terrible job, and yes, we think that you ought to vote for us, but whatever you agree or disagree with us, we believe in the First Amendment of the United States. We're going to fight for your right to speak your mind, because this is America, and that's your right. So, while we're talking about peace and prosperity, we're talking about lowering those grocery prices, we're talking about making the American dream more affordable, Kamala Harris is out there attacking her fellow citizens. And so I think what we have, my friends, is not just an opportunity to give the American people a president who will fight for the interests of the American citizens. We have an opportunity to reject the broken politics of Kamala Harris. And here's maybe the most important issue. I know we talked about it a little bit, but look, we've got 25 million illegal aliens in this country right now. We've probably added, I don't know what the exact number is, but it's probably close to 15 million illegal aliens have come in just over the last 4 years under the policies of our border czar, Kamala Harris. We've got young American families who have been overwhelmed by migrant crime in our communities. You know, we have 425,000 illegal immigrant criminals in the United States of America right now. That's more than... How many Marines do we have out there? We got any Marines out there? Hoorah, thank you. We got a few, and we thank everybody. We thank... We thank everybody for your service, regardless of the branch of service, but we have got more than double the size of the United States Marine Corps in criminal migrants in this country. Think about that. Think about how crazy it is that our own government has allowed an invasion of this country at an unprecedented scale. So to the point where for every Marine in the United States of America, we've got 2 or more violent criminals. We just got to get them out of this country. It's very simple. And here's maybe the biggest contrast, where Kamala Harris is rolling out the red carpet for illegal aliens, and she's saying, let's give Social Security and Medicare benefits to illegal immigrants. By the way, Donald J. Trump and I think that Social Security and Medicare ought to go to the citizens who paid into those programs for years. You know, our message to the illegal immigrants in this country is much different from Kamala Harris, who's rolling out the red carpet. Our message is simple. If you came into this country illegally, pack your bags, because in 3 months you're going back home. It's that simple. So, let me just leave you with this thought here. So look, in the middle of an election season, it's very easy to get caught up in red team versus blue team, Democrats versus Republicans. One of the things I'm proud about is we've got a lot of great Democrats and independents who are supporting the common sense ticket. Think about this. We've got great leaders like Bill Hagerty, Glenn Youngkin, and Doug Burgum on the right. We got people like Tulsi Gabbard and Bobby Kennedy on the left. And all of them have been united under this ticket because we are the party of common sense. We're the party of giving our fellow citizens a good life. But as much as it's going to be fun to beat Kamala Harris and the Democrats, and trust me, I'll probably enjoy it more than anybody in here. I'm going to really enjoy beating Kamala Harris and the Democrats. Trust me. We got to remember what we're actually fighting for, because over the next few days, over the next 2 days, we've got to do everything that we can to get our friends, get our family, get ourselves to the polls and vote for Donald J. Trump, because the American people need better leadership. And I've met so many people that have made me feel incredibly hopeful and optimistic about this country and about our fellow citizens. I met a woman a few weeks ago who told me that she couldn't afford the price of groceries, but she knew the names, first, middle, and last, of every single one of my 3 children, because she said a prayer for them, for me, and for my wife every single day. A woman who couldn't afford groceries praying for me every day. That's the spirit of this country. I met a woman who told me, she's a retiree, who told me for 40 years she and her husband would do steak night every Friday. That was their thing, their special ritual. But last year, they stopped doing steak night because they couldn't afford groceries under Kamala Harris's terrible inflationary policies. I've met so many parents of teenagers who tell me that their kid did what a lot of teenagers did. He made an innocent mistake, who took something under peer pressure, but because that something was laced with fentanyl, brought in by the Mexican drug cartels, that teenager didn't wake up with a headache or with a lecture from their parents. They paid for that innocent mistake with their lives. And we got to think about what's really at stake here. What's at stake is that our fellow citizens deserve to be able to afford a steak at the end of the week. Our fellow citizens deserve to be able to raise their children where an innocent childhood mistake is going to be a learning lesson and not a death sentence. Our fellow citizens deserve to have a leader that puts the interests of this country first. Our fellow citizens deserve to be able to afford to buy a home. They deserve to be able to raise their children in secure communities. They deserve to be able to believe that the American dream is real for those who work hard and play by the rules. My friends, we've got the best country in the world, the best people, the best natural resources. The only thing that is broken about the United States of America is the failed leadership of Kamala Harris. Our people deserve a better president in 2 days. Let's give it to them. God bless you guys. Vote for Donald J. Trump. Vote for our people.